Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to another installment in the JOMASHOP Saves series. The series of videos where I save you the thousands of dollars that you are just about to drop on a Swiss luxury watch by showing you a lookalike that costs a tiny fraction of the price. Well, yes and no. I don't think many people are going to watch this video and decide to buy a Pagani instead of a Tudor, but these videos do always highlight just how obscenely priced luxury watches are becoming these days. Today you can save 8,675 Australian dollars by not buying one of the new pink or blue Tudor Black Bay Flamingo chronographs and buying one of the new pink or blue Pagani chronographs instead that cost under 125 Aussie dollars. That's just over 70 US dollars, by the way, meaning that these Paganis cost less than 2% of the price of a Tudor. Now, before we go on, you saw the pop-up. I was sent these two Paganis by Pagani. I will therefore leave a link to the listing on AliExpress in the description of the video. You will also find a code in the description of the video getting you an extra $3 off. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but because the watch costs so little, that's actually an extra 5% discount. Having said all of that, I think today it's not really Pagani versus Tudor. It's blue Pagani versus pink Pagani. Which do you prefer? Leave me a comment. I'll be interested to see which of the two comes out on top. Let's flip the camera and get on with it. All right, let's get on with it. I've got two, the blue and the pink, as you saw, but I'm just going to mix and match over the course of the video. Now, you can get a premium Pagani box occasionally on AliExpress. I have no idea why anyone would want to pay extra for a premium Pagani box, but there you go. In a similar fashion, I will leave a link in the description, but if you can find this watch a couple of dollars cheaper, then please find it a couple of dollars cheaper, because a couple of dollars is actually quite a lot proportionally. Disappointed to see Pagani have changed the colour of cloth though, from blue to cream. I'm going to have to stitch myself a fresh set of curtains. Loads of spare links, by the way, 8-inch wrist, no problem at all with either of these two. And you pretty much know what you're going to get with these two before you even open those Pagani boxes, don't you? They're designed to give you as much of the look as the Tudor Black Bay without the price tag of the Tudor Black Bay. Couple of changes though. No date complication, as I'm sure you spotted one of the big differences between this and the Tudor. These two use a Seiko VK64 megaquartz movement. We've seen plenty of these over the years. 2 registers. At the 3 o'clock, we have arguably the world's most useless complication, a 24-hour sub-register, and it is a 60-minute chrono timer at the 9 o'clock. No date complication and no small second indicator either. Now, you can use the central chrono hand as a kind of pseudo second hand if you will and if you want to, but it only works for 60 minutes before stopping. That's it. So you're going to have to get used to this one not having a second indicator at all, which may take a little bit of getting used to. You've got to put your faith in the battery, still powering the movement, even though you can't see it happening. What a set of specifications for your $70 though. Stainless steel case and bracelet, sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel insert, Seiko movement, Lume on the dial and the hands, 100 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, screw down chrono push. You even get a mill clasp here with 3 holes of micro adjustment as well. Screw links holding the bracelet together, $70. Just incredible how much you get with one of these Paganis, particularly I find the chronographs. In terms of dimensions, the Pagani is a little bit smaller than the Tudor. The Tudors are 41, these are 39.5, 13.2 mil thick with a lug tip to lug tip of 47.7. 20 mils between the lugs, there's a taper down to 17.5, back up to 19.5 at the clasp you just saw. Weight as sized for my 7-inch wrist is 137 grams, and we've already discussed crystal, water resistance and movement. And you can't knock the finish either for $70, can you? Horizontal brush in the mid case, high polished chamfer from lug tip to lug tip, even 2 different types of finish on the bezel. You've got a circular brush circle here and a little high polish angled chamfer. Now the ceramic bezel insert does sit a little bit into that. There's a notable lip, but hey, I'm not going to complain too much. Pagani branded crown, unbranded but screw down chrono pushers, although I admit how useful a screw down chrono pusher is up for debate. It's a bit of a moot point. I guess it's more about water resistance rather than usability. Jubilee bracelet is fine. You know I'm a fan of the Jubilee myself, so even a cheap Jubilee is going to have a pleasant on-wrist wearing experience. You don't get quick release spring bars, and you don't get on-the-fly adjustability from the clasp. You only get those three little old-school micro-adjust holes, but again, for $70, I can't knock it too much. Standard mixture of brushing and polishing, so satin brushed outer links, high polished center links, nice bit of flexibility. That is what gives the Jubilee its comfort. Pagani design in landscape etched into the clasp, milled scissor, pressed upper, and it does even have a diver's extension. I wish Pagani would stop doing that though. Why on earth do we have a diver's extension on this type of watch? And while I'm at it, it's not a particularly good spring bar in here. If you are going to run one of these long term, maybe I would suggest swapping it over for something a bit more substantial. Alright, dial and hands, but before we talk about dial and hands, let's have a look at the sapphire. Now, I just described it as sapphire earlier on, which is pretty vague. What would you describe that? It's boxed, it's domed, but it's kind of like 1.5. It's somewhere between single dome and double dome. You get that distortion that you always get from single dome, but you get it so far towards the edges. It's a really narrow angle that I wouldn't necessarily call it single dome. Then here we are, boxed 1.5 domed sapphire crystal. Back to the dial and hands, applied indices in the classic Tudor pattern. So triangle at 12, baton at 6, circle everywhere else. Now, of the two sub-registers, both are slightly recessed within the dial, both have a little bit of an angle, a very, very shallow angle down to the central hand. And both have those classic concentric circles that you see so often in these sub-registers. Dial text is minimal, just the Pagani shield and brand name above the pinion, chronograph beneath it, printed minute track and fifth of a minute markers around the outer edge, and that's it. It's a Tudor handset, it's a snowflake hour hand, sword minute hand, both flat and high polished surrounds, and the only red on the dial here, Tudor actually put one line of red text. Pagani don't do that, they've just gone for a red tip to the chronograph hand instead. Ceramic bezel insert as noted, high gloss black with white paint filled tachymeter markings. Please, somebody leave me a comment. Tell me that at one point in your life you actually used the tachymeter scale of your chronograph. I have lived on this planet for nearly 50 years. I have never used the tachymeter scale on my chronograph, not even once. On wrist, it wears very nicely indeed, just under 40mm, but still plenty of dial because it's a fairly thin bezel insert. Just under 140 grams as well. 3 holes of micro adjust, but fairly small links because it's a Jubilee. Means you're gonna get a decent fit without resorting to that wafer thin and pointless diver's extension. What are you thinking of the two colours so far? Tudor launched the pink one last year because their brand ambassador David Beckham owns Inter Miami, whose colours are pink. So yeah, definitely the pink and the baby blue both got that kind of Miami Vice vibe to them, haven't they? Of the two, I gotta say, I like the blue. I think it's a nicer shade of blue. I got no problems with a pink watch, but that pink is a little bit too soft and muted, whereas I think the blue hits baby blue harder than the pink hits baby pink, if you see what I mean. Alright, moans and niggles. There's a lot to like here for $70, but that doesn't mean to say I'm not going to complain about a few things, starting with the Lume. You were probably expecting the Lume on a $70 Pagani to be rubbish, and you weren't wrong. It's rubbish, but it's rubbish in quite an interesting way. Initially, it looks okay, but when I turn the speed up, watch what happens. The minute hand disappears first, followed by the hour hand, followed by the indices in a really distinct and specific pattern. In fact, let me reverse that and you can see them all reappear in reverse order. So, indices appear first, then the hour hand re-emerges from the darkness, followed by the minute hand. It's amusing, but at the end of the day, it's still rubbish. And there are a number of elements combining here to make this watch feel a little bit cheap and rattly. Jubilees are jingly jangly, as we all know in the first place. That diver's extension does nobody any favours because it comes with inherent rattle and it's a pretty thin case back. I'm always moaning about thin case backs, particularly on quartz watches. They don't do them any favours. A thicker case back adds a little bit of weight and stops that kind of tinny feeling. So thin case back, Jubilee, diver's extension, all combined to, yeah, it doesn't feel as solid as the Pagani Royal Oak chronograph, for example, which feels like a right lump by comparison to this one. And no matter how hard you wish it, no matter how many times you look down at your wrist wishing to see the Tudor rose on the dial of the watch, it's not going to happen. It's not a Tudor, it's a Pagani, and you're going to have to be alright with that from the get-go if you want to buy one of these. But overall, I really can't knock Pagani's chronos too much at all. I think they are best in breed, whether you go for this one, or the Speedy, or the Daytona, or even the Royal Oak style. Reliable movement, all the right specs, and all the looks of a luxury watch, without the eye-watering price tags. So there you have it. I've been saying for years that Pagani's chronographs are the best of the brand, and these two are pretty good if you want to add a little bit of colour to your collection for not a lot of coin, and you don't mind the fact that they don't have a second hand. If you don't fancy this Pagani chronograph, why not have a look at this Pagani chronograph or this Pagani chronograph instead? Thanks for watching. I will see you again in the next one.